today is final QC day for Damien Bond, and the way that we do this is we make sure that every part and piece that's there to build a buggy goes to powder coat, because I guarantee you, if you've ever done this yourself, you've left something at the shop or you forgot something, or whenever it's all said and done, you're putting something together, you go, oh crap, I forgot a bracket. So we have this QC list, and the QC list has the customer's name, and then it has everything listed that the customer ordered on that particular build. And if you look right here, they're different colors. So we've got the brown kind of color, I guess it's like an orange. That's all stuff that we have to have before powder coat. So that's all the stuff that goes to powder coat. Then the items needed after powder coat are just things that we have to order to make sure that we can have them here when it's time to install them. The sign off for the employee is right here, and then the management or final sign off is over here. That ensures that we have a double sign-off process for everything that's over here that's going to powder coat. And this is our next step right here. We have QC all welds, and basically that has not been signed off yet because the buggy itself is next, and we got to get that thing signed off for QC. So this process is really cool. It helps us get everything, you know, organized properly, and then we make sure that whatever panels need to be whatever color get to be the right color versus us, you know, just trying to wing it. We've got something that we can check off on. So we rolled this chassis over every single direction just so we can get a fresh view. We go through and basically QC absolutely everything on the chassis. Then the guys go in and we go through and make sure that everything is smoothed out, that we don't have any little welding wire spatters or anything like that on the chassis. Everything is welded out 100%. It's hard, you know what I mean? You got a chassis like this, there's all sorts of little hiding spots, you know, going around every single piece of tubing and making sure that you've got everything smooth and that you haven't missed anything before you go to powder coat. So at this stage, it's usually 3 or 4 guys, and we spend probably 4 or 5 hours just going through everything with a fine-tooth comb, making sure that we haven't missed anything. And I can tell you straight up, this is what makes a big difference whenever you're building one of these buggies, because, you know, without this step, you go to powder coat, and every single time when you get it back, you've missed something, or there's welding spatter, or there's, you know, some piece of welding wire that just went through a weld and it's on the other side that you don't see. But, you know, 4 guys all going through this chassis over and over and over again, flipping it over all the way onto its top and basically double, triple checking everything makes a huge difference on our quality. So this is a step that we always spend a lot of time on because the finished product is 1 step away. So it's day 4 and we're working on Damien Bond's buggy. Got the engine in, and we're setting all of our wiring and stuff. You can see everything's kind of getting laid out up here in the front. Everything's nice and neat up here. Got the steering system situated. I'm about to double check all the fittings and then tighten everything down and put some fluid in here. We got the brakes done. We went ahead and plumbed all the brakes, and we've got everything bled out. Rear steer is done. I went ahead and set the rear steer location. We've got the toe adjusted, so the toe's done. We're working on our final wiring up here in the front. You can see our Deutsch connectors. All this stuff just gets kind of tidied up here in a minute, and then everything runs down the cable tray. It's coming together really good. Check that out. We're getting there. One more day. One more day. All right, so this is the day of delivering this buggy to the customer. And a lot of guys watch the videos and they say, you know what, those videos are awesome. You guys are showing off the product. It looks really good. But we'd like to see some of the behind the scenes stuff and kind of, you know, see what you guys are doing. And I wanted to show you guys a couple things that we do and something that you should do if you're ever building a buggy and you're trying to basically get to the point where it's running. So we'll start with a steering system. Whenever we build a buggy and we get to the point where it's time to fire up the buggy, you want to make sure that you don't fire your power steering pump without fluid. Running the power steering pump without fluid can damage it. So what we do is we go ahead and we fill up the reservoir with fluid to the proper level. And then we cycle the steering back and forth. And you can see we've already done this. I wish I would have taken a second to do it before, but you fill your fluid up. You put your axle on jack stands, no tires. And then you take your steering wheel and you start turning it back and forth. All right, it's going to have a lot of air in it, so it's not going to turn at first. And you're going to have to keep on doing this, and it'll suck the fluid down. And you just keep on adding fluid and turning, adding fluid and turning, and to the point where it actually starts sucking fluid all through the system, and it gets to the orbital, and then it'll actually go down to the wheels and start turning them. It'll get down to the hydraulic ram and start to turn them. That's another couple things that this does is it makes sure that you've got your lines correct. So I'm turning left, tires are turning left. If you cross your lines, you might be turning right, but your tires are turning left. And you don't want to have to take the whole entire system and tear it all back down to fix that leak after it's been pressurized, all that stuff. So it's a good idea to go ahead and do that. And you definitely want to do it because you don't want to starve your power steering pump for fluid whenever you first start it up. Now, even though we've turned this thing back and forth a bunch of times and we now have the fluid from the reservoir all the way down through the orbital to the hydraulic ram, when we start this thing, it's still going to suck the fluid down and aerate the system. But as soon as that happens, we'll have a guy standing here with power steering fluid, and as soon as we fire up the buggy, we'll start putting power steering fluid inside the reservoir, and that'll keep that pump from trying to starve out on fluid and having damage. Double check your shift linkage. You want to make sure that your shift linkage is in the accompanying gear down on your transmission. So you get your shifter, you put it in first gear, you make sure that when it's in first gear, you can take this clip on and off, and it doesn't change the location of the shifting mechanism on the transmission. You're going to do the same thing in second gear. You're going to pull it off, put it back on, make sure that it all lines up, and then you're going to go to third gear, and then you're going to do the same thing down there. You're going to pull it off, put it back on, and you're going to go through all the gears. Reverse, neutral, first, second, third are the most important. Generally, park is a pretty long throw, and you'll end up finding out that park works out pretty well almost every time, as long as you have reverse through third figured out. And that's super important because the distance that the shifter shifts, it pulls the cable a certain distance because of the distance between the pivoting mechanism and where the cable grabs on. And you have to make sure that the lever on the transmission has that same fulcrum. If it doesn't, let's say you used one manufacturer's shifting mechanism on the transmission and a different manufacturer's shifter, then the fulcrums might not be the same. So as you're going through your gears, you know, first, second, third, it might be pulling a distance of cable that's different than what the transmission fulcrum is, and you might not actually be landing on the gears. So that's a very important step that you don't want to forget. This next part might seem like a goofy thing and pretty obvious, but you know, some guys, they look down and they go, crap, I didn't do that later on down the road. Whenever you first put fluid in your transfer case, this is an Atlas transfer case. It seems really simple, but mark the fluid level. They don't have a specification on there or like a low level sensor or anything like that. And the rotation of the Atlas will change where the fluid level is. So for this particular Atlas, you can see we've put our 2 quarts in there, which are recommended from Advanced Adapters, and then we mark where the fluid level is. That way, if later on down the road that fluid level was to be changed, we would know that we need to put that fluid level back there. It helps out a lot whenever you're, doing maintenance and stuff like that. Now, let's say that this transfer case was rotated downward. It wasn't flat. It had, 10 degrees down. Well, this fluid level would be up. So that's why it's important to mark them, because depending on the rotation of your transfer case, it's going to change the location of the fluid level in this hose. Double check all your fuses. This is one of our QC deals here. We make sure that all of our fuses correspond to our accessories. Now, on one of our Busted Knuckle buggies, all these fuses are in a procedure. It says, this fuse is supposed to be this size, this is supposed to be this size, and it basically corresponds to whatever the accessory is. But if you're building your own at home, you want to make sure that those fuses are the right size, because if you do have a problem, it's going to be within the first 25 hours. I mean, that's pretty much every buggy that's ever going to happen. That's a couple tanks of gas, that's a couple weekends, and that's generally when you find out that a wire is run and touching somewhere that it's not supposed to be. So you want to make sure that these fuses are the right size so that you don't burn up your wiring and you don't end up with some type of a fire. Your transmission fluid, it's really important whenever you're doing your transmission break-in that you do it on jack stands. You don't want to overstress your transmission right off the bat, and that's something that happens to a lot of racers. It's right before a race, they're trying to get ready for a race, so they get their transmission, they throw it in, they go straight to a race, and then they whoop the living crap out of this thing. Same thing with the axles and everything else. You really want to make sure that you get some time getting the transmission warm and letting it wear in without having a bunch of pressure on it. So what we do is we put it up on jack stands, and we'll go through all the gears, forward and backwards, go through all the gears and make sure that the transmission is working properly and we're doing it without a bunch of stress on the transmission. So another thing you can do is tie in your brake system. Go ahead and put all your fittings and everything on there. Bleed the system. We use a pressure bleeder, which works really well. It bolts to the top of the cap, uses air pressure from our shop air, and forces fluid down and pushes all the air out of the calipers and everything. If you don't have one of those, obviously standard brake, bleeding procedures and everything are fine. However, you want to make sure that you don't have any leaks before you start driving the vehicle. I mean, it sounds simple and it sounds obvious, but people just get in their buggies and, put it together for the first time, then take off in a field and realize they don't have any brakes. Well, that's not what you want. You want to make sure that whenever you're getting everything situated, that you have a firm brake pedal, and that you don't have any leaks. So before we take this buggy out, we'll actually fire it up and we'll have it on jack stands, no tires, just spinning around in circles, braking in the transmission in between each gear, and then we'll go through and we'll hit the brakes, make sure everything decelerates properly, and then in our procedure it shows us that we have to hold the brake pedal down for 30 seconds and then stop, check for leaks, and then do it again. Hold it for 30 seconds as hard as you can and look for leaks. That's really important, guys. You want to make sure that you don't take this buggy out first thing and not have any brakes and then crash. Another little quick tip, check your fuel system. It seems obvious again, but if you put the entire vehicle together and then you're checking your fuel system for leaks, there's a good opportunity there for you have to pull a whole bunch of stuff apart. We don't want to have to pull a whole bunch of stuff apart. If you test your fuel system when it's just laid inside the buggy with all your fittings connected, then if there is a problem, it's easy to get to. So that's some of the thing we always do, is we always double check our fuel system and all of our transmission lines and everything like that before we button up the interior, just to make sure that if there was a problem, that we could address it before it becomes really deep inside the buggy and hard to get to.
What's up everybody, this is Jake Burkey with Busted Knuckle Off Road, and I wanted to talk to you about this project that's sitting behind me. I cannot be more excited about this project and more proud for our company specifically because the guy who bought this buggy, he probably doesn't even know it, but he was one of our very first customers at Busted Knuckle Off Road. I had just quit my job at the nuclear plant and decided I was going to start doing this full time, and it was within the first couple days of us basically going full time with the business, I got a call from Damien Bond. And we started working together and buying and selling parts and all that stuff, and we started kind of just establishing a relationship. Well, that was, what, 4 or 5 years ago? And here we are today. We've secured an awesome customer, and we had the opportunity to build him the rig of his dreams. So I want to go through a couple things that Damien said right off the bat that we needed to do. First of all, just like a lot of guys out there, he was just absolutely sick of the terrible ride in the vehicle that he had. He wanted something that we could go in and spend a lot of time on the suspension and just make sure that it was perfectly right. Well, we've done that with our production bouncers. For the last year, I've been tuning on mine and getting it to the point where it rides amazing, and now that shock tune transfers directly over into these buggies. So right off the rip, Damien's gonna get a suspension that's tuned from the last year of what I've been working on. Number two, he knew that he wanted a little bit more power, so we went with a 427 stroker. It's an awesome platform, same weight as the LS3 or the 408 stroker, but makes 635 horsepower, so it's got all the power right where you need it and keeps the weight down. The third thing was that he wanted a couple pizzazz things, right? So he wanted it to be spicy. He wanted to have a few more cool factor things. So we ended up hooking him up with some rock lights from Infinite Off Road. We've got rock lights that go all the way around this thing. We've got 3 in the front, 3 in the back that shine down on the ground to give him that really cool look. We've got a communications kit so that he can talk to other vehicles. And us, whenever we go four-wheeling, we can go four-wheeling together and then we hit a button and we're talking intercom between 2 cars. But you can also talk to and forth from your co-pilot to pilot. You can take phone calls, you can stream music. We put them in all of our buggies. It's just such an awesome upgrade. He also went for the heated seats, which is really an awesome upgrade, especially on those cold nights. Damien knew for a fact that he wanted rear steer, and I can't blame him. Rear steer is an awesome upgrade. It increases the maneuverability of these rigs like you wouldn't believe. We lose razors all the time in the woods with the maneuverability of the rear steer of one of these. It's an electric over hydraulic, fully self-centering kit, and basically you have a joystick that sits right next to your shifter. You hit a button, it turns one way or the other, you let go of the joystick, go back up to your steering wheel, the rear tires automatically self-center right where they're supposed to be. That maneuverability is huge, especially for a rig like this where a guy's going to be doing a ton of trail riding. It's definitely a really good upgrade. So Damien wanted a really different color combination than what we've seen before in some of our other buggies, which I think is totally cool because a lot of guys don't realize that you can change the colors and the patterns and stuff on the buggy to really make it yours and to set it off from other vehicles. Damien gave me a couple different things. He said, you know what, I want this thing to be absolutely sinister. I'm thinking, you know, something dark, something sinister, something that just looks really, really cool. He also gave me a couple colors. He said, you know what, I'm thinking like a red and a black. So then he said, you know what, Jake, I want you to kind of take over and kind of come up with the color choices. And I really enjoyed that because I thought that that was something that it allowed me to kind of have a canvas, you know, if you will, and I was able to kind of come up with something. And this is, in my eyes, one of the coolest looking rigs just because I've always been that type of guy where I love like a sinister look, and it's a two-tone. So not everything on this buggy is all that same red. It's not all the same blood red. You've got some flat black, you've got some blood red, and just those hints and those accents really make this rig stand out. So for the past week, we have absolutely been busting our tails on this rig. We knew that Damien had a ride coming up this weekend, and we planned to have it done on Friday, and we were thinking he'd come down, we'd get him the rig, we'd show him around, and he'd go up. Well, Damien calls and says, you know what, man, I'm going to be there on Wednesday, and I'm going to leave out on Thursday. Is there any way you can get this rig done by then? We absolutely busted our tails, and our group came together, and we just put everything aside and pushed this rig to the front. And I'm super happy with the way everything came out, man. We did a really good job. We're really happy with everything, and he's in the parking lot right now. He's actually sitting in the parking lot with his RV, and he doesn't know that we're shooting this video right now, but when he sees the video, he'll realize that he's outside, we're inside shooting the video, and tomorrow morning he's going to see this thing for the first time. Go riding with this weekend.
Oh, there go that color.
Yeah. All right, y'all ready?
Yeah. Check that out. Man, that color does look good.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like just super sinister looking.
That did come out. It's almost nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, y'all did such a good job.
Appreciate it. Oh yeah, y'all gonna love riding this thing.
That's that next level. Say it again. Let's see the picture. Cause she drives, I like to ride sometimes.
Okay. So if you just flip those buttons, up is high, down is low. So you can do your heated seats, and then you got your steering wheel adjustment and all that stuff sitting right there.
And the seat goes forward.
Yep, the seat goes forward and the pedals come back too.
Oh.
I had it set up thinking that Damien was going to be doing it, so if you guys need to,
Well, we can play.
Yeah, if we need to, adjust or something like that, we can. But yeah,
Man, I'm digging that color.
yeah, I think so too. When it gets out in the sun too, you'll see it's like a completely different.
Right. So it's black at night and
Mhm.
got some color in the day.
Oh yeah, push the push button for it to start. Right back.
Damien went ahead and got the first roll out of the way. Right back on his tires though, so I mean, that's good. That's basically like not rolling at all.